A while back, I made a video covering a bunch of games that, despite being fan creations, were every bit as good as, if not better than, officially released video games. Since the library of games created by fans is not only vast but ever expanding, I figured the topic was worth revisiting. I'm sure this won't be the last time I do this, but today let's check out some fan games that give official games a run for their money. And speaking of money, before we get into the video, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Boxu. Boxu is a monthly subscription box that delivers a whole plethora of Japanese snacks right to your door. Starting at $36.99, each month you'll receive a box full of authentic Japanese goodies, each month featuring a new theme and different snacks. The first box I received is called Seasons of Japan and comes with a bunch of snacks whose flavors pair with each of the 4 seasons, and it comes with a little booklet that not only explains the reasoning behind all these pairings, but also has a ton of reading material on each included snack. My personal favorite was the matcha chocolate stick cake because I love matcha, and the yuzu sake candy was a big hit as well. So if this seems up your alley and you want to check out Boxu's delicious, authentic Japanese snack offerings shipped straight from Japan while also helping support my channel, you can use my 10% discount code and link in the description to save up to $47 on your order. Now on to the video. For the few of you who have been around since the beginning, one of the first videos I ever made on this channel was on an NES game called Yonoid. Don't watch it, it's not good, but neither is the game. It was a licensed reskin of a Famicom game released to promote Domino's Pizza. It's a 2D platformer where you play as Domino's mascot at the time, the Noid. And I guess it's kind of relevant because for some reason he's back now. At least they made him a little less gross this time. The game admittedly does have a little bit of charm, but overall it's very strange and just not a very good game. What I never expected, though, was for someone to create a fan-made sequel in the form of a 3D platformer. According to the official site, the game was created for a game jam in only a month back in 2017. Despite that, though, this is extremely impressive. Aside from getting a little weird with the plot, it genuinely feels like it could have been an official sequel released for the PS1, and that's pretty much exactly what it's going for. The original version of the game is in 4:3 aspect ratio with a composite filter thrown over it, as well as a super compressed intro video to make it look like an old-school FMV, and it's all extremely convincing. However, a remastered version was released, and with a quick toggle in the menu, you get full widescreen support and sharp polygons. The retro look is pretty cool, but the higher resolution is easier on my eyes and just looks better for the video, so I ended up playing it that way. Yonoid 2 Enter the Void is a 3D platformer with about 4.5 stages in total. It's not super long, only a few hours, but I think that's to be expected. There's an intro stage that's essentially a 3D reimagining of the first stage from the original game, but after that, you're dropped into a hub world where you get to tackle the 3 main stages in any order you want. There definitely is an intended order as far as difficulty is concerned, but you can kind of just do whatever you want. Once you beat a stage, these giant pizza boxes start to stack up in the middle of the hub world, eventually creating a ladder to the final stage. The game's main mechanic is the Noid's yo-yo, which now acts as a sort of grappling hook, which you can use to tether onto objects to swing from, and combined with wall jumping and wall running, the platforming in this game becomes surprisingly involved. The stages are all mostly linear, except for the 3rd main stage, which shockingly is like a whole-ass Zelda dungeon. Maybe not quite as big as one, but in terms of the ratio between linearity and non-linearity, progression, and puzzle solving, it's got Zelda written all over it, with puzzles involving multiple floors and changing the physicality of the dungeon. It's pretty insane. The dialogue is all really charming and actually pretty funny at times, and even has a sort of Banjo-Kazooie kind of voice acting to drive it. They actually managed to make the Noid an interesting and endearing character, and he's actually almost kinda cute in this game, which is shocking because the Noid is historically fucking disgusting.
Ew, gross.
I beat the game and there's still so much I haven't seen. I don't want to give away too much because I genuinely think it's worth playing, so I don't want to spoil the final boss, for example, but I actually think I'm going to continue to play this game after the video is done because they really packed it with content despite it being short. Here's one example. Once you beat the main campaign, you can start a new game and play as Mr. Green, the antagonist from the first game. He's basically the Luigi run. His jump is much higher, but also floatier, and after trying it out for only a few minutes, I can already tell that playing with these altered physics completely changes how you approach platforming. There's also other hidden game modes as well that I don't even know about yet, so if I were you, I'd download this immediately if you like 3D platformers that challenge your dexterity as well as your brain. Also, there's a dedicated tab button. Hey, real quick, if you're liking the video, consider subscribing. It actually helps a lot when you guys subscribe. I know you've heard this a million times, but it really does. And if you want to see everything I do, consider tapping that button. That's all I gotta say. Anyone who's been watching this channel long enough probably knows I'm a pretty big fan of Undertale. Literally wrote a couple songs about it. The kind of phenomenon that Undertale caused on the internet is just something that doesn't happen. I don't think there's ever been a game before that did just what Undertale did in terms of sheer response from the internet, and who knows if something like that'll ever happen again. And if you somehow don't know what I'm talking about, you really just had to be there. In the wake of Undertale's release, the outpour of fan-created content was staggering. Fan art, fan fiction, theories, videos covering tons of different aspects of the game, people like myself wrote music about the game, and of course, fan games. One of the many fan games to come out was a short little game called Undertale Red. Now, it's not a fully fledged adventure, just one single boss fight, but like Undertale, there are multiple endings, even more so as there are tons of different ways to approach the fight. Unsurprisingly, there's both pacifist and genocide routes, but there's also multiple neutral routes. Unlike a lot of fan-created Undertale games, this one isn't a mod of the original game. It was completely built from scratch in Unity minus the UI and audio. The game is focused on a brand new character named Red, who serves some kind of role in Undyne's royal guard. The story takes place sometime during the events of Undertale, and it's basically a what-if scenario of the player getting lost and having a run-in with Red. Red is a character that, like many others depending on your chosen route, wants to fight you despite that not being your intent. The fan lore here sticks pretty close to the kind of writing you'd find in the official game, and it honestly fits right in. The gimmicks in the fight itself and the attacks you have to evade are honestly very close to what's in the actual game, and if this was a real secret encounter found in Undertale, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. There's also an option when you start the game up to use an altered game control. The typical controls in Undertale are a bit strange, but when using the arrow keys to move during battle, diagonal movement is actually much faster than when you move in the cardinal directions. This game's default controls fixes all directions to the same movement speed, but it does give you the option to use Undertale's original controls, so it's totally up to you what you'd rather go with. Personally, I chose the new controls since I figured the developer designed the boss fight around them, but in hindsight, I probably would have been more comfortable with the traditional ones. Because this is just a boss fight and not a full-on adventure, a one-time playthrough is extremely short, but if you're really into getting all the endings and seeing every bit of dialogue and outcome, this one will keep you busy for quite a while. This may be a really short fan game, but the quality of the boss fight and writing are right up there with the real thing. I mean this with no hyperbole when I say the absolute best Bomberman game ever made is a fan creation. I'm not even sure where to begin with this one because it's not only one of the most feature-packed fan games I've ever played, but of any video game period. Power Bomberman is a celebration of all things Bomberman, his history, and even Hudson Soft as a whole. There are so many features, modes, and options included in this game that there isn't enough time in the day to even begin scratching the surface of what's available, much less actually get to playing it all. What we have here is a primarily multiplayer-focused but still capable of being played by yourself Bomberman game with countless game modes, stages, layouts, rules, characters, and on top of all of that, you can even play online. And yes, there were active games I was able to jump into very quickly. This game can be as simple as you want or as chaotic as you want. It basically takes everything the franchise has ever done, as well as some original ideas here and there, and throws it all into one jam-packed video game. There are tons of characters to unlock that are not only from every Bomberman game in the entire franchise up to literally Super Bomberman R, but characters from other Hudson franchises like Bonk and Adventure Island. These characters can either be straight up purchased from the shop, or you can try your luck at the coin-operated machine, which will unlock a mystery character at random. There's even a score mode that's single-player focused that's based on the original Bomberman game for the NES, as well as a turbo mode, which is my preferred way to play it. It's basically an updated version of the original NES game, and it was surprisingly fun to play. They were even helpful enough to add a little section accessible from the main menu where the game will not only explain the plethora of power-ups the game has, but demonstrates them with a visual of the buttons being used. I'd have liked if they included the ability to actually try the power-ups out in like a practice mode as opposed to just a visual tutorial, but this is extremely helpful nonetheless and clears up a lot of confusion considering there's about 1 billion power-ups. There are so many different modes and layouts that I couldn't possibly get to them all, but there's classic stage layouts, these super widescreen stages where the camera is zoomed out and the map is enormous, different layouts you can choose from per stage, there's team battles, the list is honestly seemingly endless. It's the ultimate customizable Bomberman experience, and if you're a huge Bomberman fan, this game will scratch virtually any itch you can possibly have. The sheer scope of this entire game is staggering, and it's one of the most ambitious fan projects I've ever come across. If you're any kind of Bomberman fan, you're doing yourself an unbelievable disservice by not playing this. Well, it just wouldn't be a fan game video if I didn't talk about Sonic. Now, it's no secret that the Sonic fanbase is pretty divided. You have people who like the classic gameplay, those who prefer the adventure era, fans of the boost formula, players who like when the franchise tries something completely different, and then you have die-hard Sonic fans who just are excited to play whatever comes out. Sonic's never really had a consistent formula the way a lot of other iconic franchises have, but when looking at 3D Sonic specifically, for the most part, people either prefer the most recent boost formula or wish the series would go back to how it controlled in the Dreamcast era with the adventure games, or even, dare I say it, Sonic 06. Sonic GT is a fan-made 3D Sonic game that, as far as I can tell, feels like a perfect marriage of boost and adventure. It's got the speed, flow, loose controls, and large levels akin to the boost formula, but also gives the player a little more agency and options for exploration. It's like they've created boost formula levels that feel almost like a sandbox. They're straightforward linear paths like the boost formula levels, but there's also wide open areas to explore. The game isn't super long, only 4 full levels as well as a tutorial stage and a final boss, but I spent a good hour and a half on this, and that was only with completing the main campaign once. It has a fully fledged story mode complete with voice acting, which in my opinion is a bit hit or miss, but to be fair, it's not something that they necessarily needed to include at all, and despite the performances maybe being a bit questionable, the voices themselves were relatively fitting, and it does add to the experience overall. In terms of controls, there's added mobility with wall jumping and other mechanics, and because of this, the game actually is a bit more liberal with letting you get yourself out of situations where you'd typically fall to your death in other Sonic games, boost or adventure. The stages are also absolutely enormous. Because the speed in this game is comparable to boost formula games while not being as much of an on-rails experience, the levels themselves had to be fleshed out into actual stages as opposed to just glorified scenery. Once you finish the main story, you have so many options for replayability too. You can replay the story as Mighty, or even play as Shadow and Ray in the time attack and challenge modes, complete with each respective character's special ability, meaning yes, when you play as Ray, you can f***ing glide. There's also secret emeralds to track down a la the Sonic Adventure emerald hunting missions, only this time, they're implemented into the same stages you normally blaze through, further showcasing the fact that these stages are designed to be explored. This is a great take on modern Sonic gameplay, and it's honestly the direction I think the series should actually go in. You're never gonna please everyone, but this is a damn good compromise. If you're a fan of 3D Sonic, definitely try out Sonic GT. And that's all the games I checked out today. Games like these never cease to impress me, and it's mind-blowing that some fans can manage to create games that are so high in quality that they're nearly indistinguishable from official releases. And I'd say out of all of these, that's most prevalent in Power Bomberman. Konami could slap their name on that and throw it on modern platforms, and I promise you nobody would have any idea it was fan-made. It's that good. And Yonoid 2 genuinely feels and looks like a game that came out in 1998, and a good one at that. Those are my 2 personal favorites anyway, but any of these are worth your time, and I urge you to try out at least one of them. And if you personally know of any fan games that are on par with official games, feel free to comment them below, because I know I'll be revisiting this topic again in the future. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it and want to see more, there's a couple other videos right there you can check out. And if you want to see everything I do, subscribe and tap the bell icon, and hopefully you'll get notifications for that. And if you want to help support the channel, I also have a Patreon right there too.